Marcus Thompson had always been a risk-taker. At 28, he owned a small motorcycle repair shop in Portsmouth, just a few miles from the historic naval base. His friends knew him as the guy who would take any dare, the one who laughed at danger and treated life like one big adventure. His black leather jacket was covered with patches from motorcycle clubs across England, and his Harley-Davidson was his pride and joy. On this particular autumn morning, Marcus was riding through the city center when he spotted something unusual. A royal guard, resplendent in his red tunic and tall bearskin hat, was walking alone down a side street. The guard looked to be heading toward the naval base, probably for some special ceremony. Marcus had heard rumors about a Royal Marines tattoo happening later that week, a grand military display that would attract thousands of visitors. What caught Marcus's attention wasn't just the guard himself, but the fact that he was completely alone and seemed lost in thought. The morning fog was thick and there weren't many people around. Marcus's mischievous mind started working. He had always wondered what those fancy uniforms felt like, how heavy they were, and whether they were as uncomfortable as they looked. As he rode slowly behind the guard, an crazy idea formed in his head. The street was empty except for them. The guard was walking at a steady pace, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. Marcus knew the area well and could see that they were approaching a narrow alley that would provide perfect cover. His heart started racing with excitement and nervousness. Marcus had pulled pranks before, but nothing quite like this. He remembered the time he had dressed up as a pizza delivery guy to sneak into a fancy party, or when he had convinced his entire neighborhood that he was an undercover police officer for 3 weeks. But this was different. This involved the Royal Guard, one of the most respected and protected institutions in Britain. The guard turned into the alley, just as Marcus had predicted. This was his chance. Marcus parked his motorcycle at the entrance of the alley and quietly followed on foot. The guard was checking his phone, completely absorbed in whatever message he was reading. Marcus could see that the man was younger than he had initially thought, probably in his early 20s, with a nervous expression on his face. Taking a deep breath, Marcus decided to act. He approached the guard from behind, his heart pounding, so hard he was sure the entire city could hear it. In one swift motion, he grabbed the guard's red tunic and bearskin hat. The young guard spun around in shock, his mouth opening wide in surprise. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the guard too stunned to react and Marcus realizing that he had actually gone through with his ridiculous plan. The guard, whose name tag read Private Johnson, was too surprised to immediately fight back. Marcus quickly pulled off the heavy red tunic and grabbed the enormous bearskin hat. The uniform was heavier than he had expected, and the hat felt like it weighed 20 pounds. Private Johnson stood there in his white undershirt and dark trousers, looking more confused than angry. "What are you doing?" Johnson finally managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. Marcus grinned widely, already putting on the red tunic over his own clothes. "Just borrowing this for a bit, mate. Don't worry, you'll get it back." The tunic was too tight and the hat kept sliding down over his eyes, but Marcus felt a strange thrill wearing the uniform. He had done it. He had actually stolen a Royal Guards outfit, something that probably no one in history had ever attempted. Private Johnson was still standing there, looking around nervously as if he expected other guards to appear at any moment. "You're completely mad," Johnson said, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're going to be in?" Marcus adjusted the heavy bearskin hat and struck a pose. "Sometimes you have to do something completely mad to feel alive," he replied. "Besides, when will I ever get another chance to wear one of these?" He took out his phone and snapped a few selfies, laughing at how ridiculous he looked. The uniform was clearly meant for someone shorter and stockier than his tall, lean frame. The red tunic stretched awkwardly across his chest, and the gold buttons looked ready to pop off at any moment. Private Johnson glanced around the alley nervously. "Look, I really need that uniform back. I'm supposed to be at the base in 20 minutes for rehearsal." "Rehearsal for what?" Marcus asked, suddenly curious. "The Royal Marines tattoo," Johnson replied. "It's this weekend, and if I'm late or missing my uniform, I'll be in serious trouble. My commanding officer doesn't tolerate any mistakes." Marcus felt a small pang of guilt but pushed it aside. This was the adventure of a lifetime. How many people could say they had worn an actual Royal Guard uniform? He promised himself he would return it soon, after he had a little fun with it. "Don't worry," Marcus said, already heading toward the alley entrance. "I'll bring it back in a few hours. Just tell them you spilled something on it and had to get it cleaned." Before Private Johnson could protest further, Marcus was gone, jogging. Back to his motorcycle with the heavy uniform making every step awkward and difficult. Marcus rode through Portsmouth wearing the Royal Guard uniform, feeling like he was living in some kind of wild dream. The bearskin hat kept sliding down over his eyes, forcing him to stop every few blocks to adjust it. People on the street were staring, some taking pictures with their phones, others pointing and laughing. A few tourists even asked him to pose for photos, thinking he was part of some promotional event. At a traffic light, an elderly woman approached him. "Excuse me, young man, are you with the Royal Marines tattoo?" she asked politely. Marcus grinned, under the heavy hat. "Something like that," he replied, not wanting to lie completely but enjoying the attention. "How wonderful," the woman exclaimed. "My grandson is performing in it. Could you tell me when the next rehearsal is?" Marcus realized he had no idea what he was talking about. You'd have to check with the base for specific times," he said awkwardly. The woman thanked him and walked away, leaving Marcus with a growing sense of unease. He was starting to understand that this wasn't just a harmless prank. The Royal Marines tattoo was clearly a big deal, and people had family members involved. Private Johnson had mentioned rehearsals, which meant this was serious military business. As he continued riding, Marcus noticed more military vehicles than usual on the roads. Several official-looking cars with government plates passed by, and he spotted at least 3 police officers who gave him curious looks. The reality of what he had done was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just any uniform. It belonged to the Royal Guard, one of the most respected military units in the country. Marcus decided to head to his favorite pub, the Anchor, where he could show off his prize to his friends. The pub was a local hangout for motorcycle enthusiasts and people who appreciated a good story. He knew they would get a kick out of seeing him in the uniform. When he walked into the Anchor, still wearing the red tunic and carrying the bearskin hat under his arm, the entire place went quiet. His friend Danny, who was playing pool, dropped his cue stick. Sarah, the bartender who had known Marcus for 5 years, stared at him with her mouth open. "Marcus, what the hell are you wearing?" Danny asked, walking over to examine the uniform more closely. "Official Royal Guard outfit, Marcus announced proudly. "The real deal." The pub erupted in laughter and cheers. Everyone wanted to touch the uniform and try on the hat. Marcus felt like a celebrity, telling the story of how he had convinced the guard to let him borrow it for a few hours. He didn't mention that he had essentially stolen it. Instead, he made it sound like a friendly agreement between 2 guys who understood each other. "This thing must be worth thousands," said Tom, an older man who claimed to have served in the Navy years ago. "The craftsmanship is incredible." Marcus hadn't thought about the monetary value of what he was wearing. Now that Tom mentioned it, he realized that the uniform was probably worth more than his motorcycle. The gold buttons alone looked expensive, and the fabric felt like the finest wool he had ever touched. After an hour of being the center of attention, Marcus started to feel uncomfortable. Several people in the pub were asking detailed questions about the Royal Marines tattoo, assuming he was actually involved with it. A young couple wanted to know how they could get tickets, and a retired military officer was asking about specific ceremonial procedures that Marcus knew nothing about. "I should probably head out," Marcus told Danny quietly. "I need to return this thing." "Already?" Danny seemed disappointed. "Come on, mate. How often do you get to wear something like that?" Marcus was about to explain when his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Private Johnson. Please bring back my uniform immediately. The rehearsal has been moved up and I'm in serious trouble." The guilt that Marcus had been pushing down all morning suddenly hit him full force. He realized that while he had been playing dress-up and enjoying the attention, a young soldier was probably facing disciplinary action because of his selfishness. Private Johnson might even be kicked out of the tattoo, something he had probably trained months for. Marcus quickly said goodbye to his friends and left the Anchor. As he was putting the bearskin hat back on to ride his motorcycle, he noticed something troubling. The hat felt different somehow, and when he looked more closely, he saw that one of the decorative elements was missing. During all the passing around at the pub, something had broken or fallen off. Panic started to set in. Not only had he stolen the uniform, but now he had damaged it. The missing piece was small, but on such a formal and important uniform, even tiny details mattered. Marcus searched the floor of the pub, but couldn't find anything. He asked Sarah if anyone had noticed anything falling, but no one had been paying attention to such small details. Standing outside the anchor with the damaged uniform, Marcus realized that his fun adventure was turning into a serious problem. He had to return the uniform to Private Johnson, but now he would have to explain that it was damaged. Even worse, he was starting to understand that the Royal Marines tattoo was a major event that involved much more than just one young guard. As he rode back toward the area where he had encountered Johnson, Marcus saw military trucks and official vehicles everywhere. The entire city seemed to be preparing for something big. Police officers were directing traffic, and he could see crowds of people heading toward the naval base. Signs everywhere advertised the Royal Marines tattoo as a once-in-a-lifetime spectacular event. Marcus's stomach dropped. This wasn't just some routine military exercise. This was a major public event that probably involved hundreds of performers and thousands of spectators. By taking Johnson's uniform, he might have disrupted something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Marcus rode around Portsmouth for over an hour, looking for Private Johnson, but the young guard was nowhere to be found. The city was bustling with activity related to the Royal Marines tattoo, and Marcus began to realize just how massive this event really was. Military personnel were everywhere, setting up barriers, directing traffic, and coordinating what looked like preparations for thousands of visitors. He tried calling the number that had texted him, but it went straight to voicemail. Marcus left. Several messages, each one sounding more desperate than the last. "Johnson, it's the guy with your uniform. I'm trying to find you to give it back. Please call me." As he rode past the naval base, Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. Military police were stationed at every entrance, and they seemed to be checking everyone who went in or out more carefully than usual. One officer was holding what looked like a photograph and showing it to other personnel. Marcus couldn't see the photo clearly, but he had a sinking feeling it might be related to his morning adventure. Deciding it was too risky to go near the base, Marcus headed to a quiet park where he could think about his options. He sat on a bench, still wearing the red tunic but with the bearskin hat beside him, trying to figure out how to fix this mess. The uniform felt heavier now, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. An elderly man walking. His dog approached the bench. "Excuse me, son," he said kindly. "Are you all right? You look troubled." Marcus looked up at the man, who had gentle eyes and wore a jacket with several military medals pinned to it. "Just having a difficult day," Marcus replied. The man sat down beside him, his small terrier settling at their feet. "I'm George," he said. "Served in the Royal Marines for 30 years. Retired now, but I still love watching the young lads perform. At the tattoo." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Of all the people to run into, it had to be a retired Royal Marine. "I'm Marcus," he managed to say. George looked at the uniform with obvious respect. "Beautiful outfit," he said. "The craftsmanship is exceptional. Are you performing in the tattoo this year?" Marcus knew he should tell the truth, but something about George's kind manner made him hesitate. "Not exactly," he said carefully. "First time wearing the full dress uniform?" George asked. "I remember my first time. Felt like I was carrying the weight of history on my shoulders." The old man's words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He realized that this wasn't just clothing. It was a symbol of honor, duty, and tradition that went back generations. Men had worn uniforms like this into battle, had died wearing them, had dedicated their lives to earning the right to wear them. "George," Marcus said suddenly, "what would happen if someone lost their uniform right before a big ceremony?" The elderly man's expression grew serious. "That would be a disaster," he said quietly. "The tattoo is one of our most important traditions. Every performer trains for months, sometimes years. Missing a rehearsal because of uniform problems could mean being removed from the entire event. Marcus felt sick. And if the uniform was damaged? Even worse, George replied. These uniforms are specially fitted and maintained. Each one is assigned to a specific performer. You can't just replace them overnight. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching other people walk through the park. Marcus could see families heading toward the naval base area, excited children, pointing at military vehicles, and groups of tourists taking pictures of everything related to the upcoming tattoo. Finally, George stood up. Whatever is troubling you, son, the best thing to do is face it honestly. In the Marines, we learned that running from a problem only makes it worse. After George left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts. He knew the old Marine was right. He had to find Private Johnson and return the uniform, even if it meant getting into serious trouble. But first, he needed to try to fix the damage. Marcus remembered that his friend Lisa worked at a costume and theatrical supply shop downtown. If anyone could help repair the uniform, it would be her. He carefully put the bearskin hat back on and rode to Lisa's shop, hoping she would be able to work some kind of miracle. "Marcus," Lisa exclaimed when he walked into her shop, "what are you doing in that incredible uniform?" "It's a long story," Marcus said, "and I need your help badly." He explained the situation as honestly as he could, admitting that he had taken the uniform without permission, and that something had broken off the hat. Lisa listened without judgment, examining the damaged area carefully. "I can see where something came off," she said, pointing to a small area where the fabric looked different. "It was probably a decorative button or emblem. Do you have any idea what it looked like?" Marcus shook his head miserably. Everyone was passing it around at the pub. It could have fallen anywhere. Lisa thought for a moment. "I might have something that could work as a temporary fix," she said. "It won't be perfect, but from a distance no one would notice." She disappeared into the back of her shop and returned with a small box of military-style buttons and emblems. After trying several options, she found one that was close enough to match the others on the hat. "This is the best I can do," she said, carefully sewing the replacement piece into place. "But Marcus, you need to return this uniform immediately, and you need to be prepared for the consequences." Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. The uniform looked almost normal again, but he knew that up close an expert would notice the replacement piece. Still, it was better than returning a clearly damaged hat. "Thank you, Lisa," he said. "I owe you a huge favor." "Just promise me you'll do the right thing," she replied. As Marcus left the shop, his phone buzzed with another message. This time it wasn't from Private Johnson. The message was from an unknown number. "We know who you are. Return the uniform to Portsmouth Naval Base. Gate 3, within 2 hours or face criminal charges." Marcus stared at the threatening message on his phone, his hands shaking slightly. The reality of his situation was becoming crystal clear. This wasn't just a prank anymore. Someone in authority knew exactly who he was and what he had done. The word criminal charges sent a chill down his spine. He rode slowly toward the naval base, his mind racing with possibilities. How had they identified him so quickly? Maybe someone at the pub had recognized the seriousness of the situation and reported him. Or perhaps there were security cameras in the alley where he had taken the uniform from Private Johnson. As he approached Gate 3, Marcus could see increased security presence. Military police officers were stationed at checkpoints, and several official vehicles were parked nearby. He took a deep breath and decided to face whatever was waiting for him. A stern-looking military police sergeant approached as Marcus parked his motorcycle. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" the sergeant asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, removing the bearskin hat and holding it respectfully. "I'm Sergeant Williams. You need to come with me immediately," the sergeant said, "and bring the uniform." Marcus was escorted through the base to a small office building. The walk felt like the longest of his life. Military personnel stopped what they were doing to stare at him, some shaking their heads in disapproval, others looking curious about what was happening. Inside the building, Marcus was led to an office where a middle-aged officer with numerous medals on his chest was waiting. The nameplate on his desk read, "Colonel Harrison, Mr. Thompson, Colonel Harrison said, without looking up from some paperwork. Do you have any idea how serious this situation is? I'm starting to understand, sir, Marcus replied quietly. The colonel finally looked up, his steely blue eyes studying Marcus carefully. Private Johnson has been in my office 3 times today, explaining how his uniform went missing. His story keeps changing, but security footage from downtown shows you wearing his uniform at approximately 11:30 this morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Of course there were cameras. In a city preparing for a major military event, surveillance would be everywhere. Sir, I want to return the uniform and apologize, Marcus said. I never meant for this to become such a big problem. Do you know what the Royal Marines tattoo represents, Mr. Thompson? The colonel asked, standing up and walking to a wall covered with photographs of previous ceremonies. Not really, sir. I mean, I know it's some kind of military show. Colonel Harrison pointed to one of the photographs showing hundreds of Marines in perfect formation. This event honors the service and sacrifice of generations of Royal Marines. It's attended by members of the royal family, foreign dignitaries, and families of fallen heroes. Every detail must be perfect. Marcus began to understand the magnitude of what he had disrupted. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a sacred tradition. Private Johnson was selected for this tattoo after 18 months of training, the colonel continued. He's one of only 60 Marines chosen from over 300 applicants. Missing even one rehearsal could disqualify him from participating. Will he still be able to perform? Marcus asked. That remains to be seen, the colonel replied. His uniform fitting was scheduled for this afternoon. Thanks to your actions, he missed it. The door opened, and Private Johnson walked in, looking exhausted and worried. When he saw Marcus, his expression was a mixture of relief and anger. Private Johnson, Colonel Harrison said, Mr. Thompson is here to return your uniform. Marcus immediately began removing the red tunic. I'm so sorry, he said to Johnson. I had no idea how important this was to you. Johnson took the uniform and examined it carefully. Marcus held his breath as the young soldier inspected the bearskin hat, looking for any signs of damage. For a moment, Johnson paused at the area where Lisa had made the repair, but he didn't say anything. It appears to be in acceptable condition, Johnson reported to the colonel. Marcus felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. However, Colonel Harrison said, the issue isn't just about returning the uniform. Mr. Thompson, you've committed several serious offenses: theft of military property, impersonating a member of the Royal Guard, and interfering with official military operations. Sir, I really didn't think about it that way, Marcus said. I just thought it would be fun to try on the uniform. Fun? The colonel's voice rose slightly. Mr. Thompson, we've spent the entire day trying to determine if this was part of a larger security threat. Resources that should have been focused on preparing for the tattoo have been diverted to investigating your fun. Marcus realized he hadn't considered that his actions might be seen as a potential security breach. In a time when military events were targets for various threats, taking a uniform could easily be interpreted as something much more sinister than a prank. What happens now, sir? Marcus asked. Colonel Harrison returned to his desk and picked up a phone. That depends on several factors. The first question is whether Private Johnson will be pressing charges. All eyes turned to the young soldier. Johnson looked at Marcus for a long moment, clearly struggling with his decision. Sir, Johnson said finally, I'd like to speak with Mr. Thompson privately for a moment, if that's possible. Colonel Harrison nodded and gestured for them to step into an adjacent room. Once they were alone, Johnson's formal military demeanor relaxed slightly. Look, Johnson said quietly, I'm not going to lie. You really messed up my day, but I can see that you didn't mean any real harm. Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. I swear I didn't realize how serious this was. The thing is, Johnson continued, if I press charges, this becomes a legal matter that could drag on for months. The publicity could actually hurt the tattoo more than help it. So what are you saying? Marcus asked. Johnson took a deep breath. I'm willing not to press charges, but only if you do something for me in return. Marcus looked at Private Johnson with a mixture of hope and nervousness. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Johnson glanced toward the door to make sure they wouldn't be overheard. "The tattoo is this Saturday night, because of all the chaos. Today I missed my final uniform fitting and the technical rehearsal with the lighting crew. The performance involves very specific movements that have to be coordinated with spotlights and music." "Okay," Marcus said, still not understanding where this was going. "I need someone to help me practice," Johnson explained. "Someone who can run through the routine with me, help me time my movements, and basically be my rehearsal partner for the next 3 days." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You want me to help you prepare for the event that I almost ruined?" "I know it sounds crazy," Johnson admitted, "but think about it. You've already worn the uniform, so you have some idea of how awkward it is to move in it. And honestly, I don't have anyone else. Most of the other performers are busy with their own preparation." "But I don't know anything about military ceremonies," Marcus protested. "I can teach you," Johnson said. "It's mostly about precise timing and staying in formation. The actual movements aren't that complicated once you learn them." Marcus thought about this unexpected opportunity. It was certainly better than facing criminal charges, and part of him was genuinely curious about what went into creating such a spectacular event. "If I help you," Marcus said, "what happens with Colonel Harrison? He seemed pretty angry." "If I tell him I'm not pressing charges and that you're going to help with my preparation, he'll probably agree to it," Johnson replied. "The military values people who take responsibility for their mistakes and try to make things right." They returned to Colonel Harrison's office, where the older officer was reviewing what looked like security reports. "Sir," Johnson said, "I've decided not to press charges against Mr. Thompson. Instead, I'd like to request permission to have him assist with my final preparations for the tattoo." Colonel Harrison looked up sharply. "Explain that, Private." Johnson outlined his plan, emphasizing how Marcus's help could ensure that he was fully prepared for Saturday's performance. Marcus was impressed by how professionally the young soldier presented the idea. "This is highly irregular," the colonel said after Johnson finished. "Mr. Thompson is a civilian with no military training or security clearance." "Sir, with respect, the alternative is that I try to prepare alone and risk not being at my best for the tattoo," Johnson replied. Colonel Harrison studied both of them carefully. "Mr. Thompson, if I agree to this arrangement, you would be on this base every day until Saturday. You would follow all military protocols. You would be supervised at all times, and any breach of conduct would result in immediate criminal prosecution." "I understand, sir," Marcus said. "Furthermore," the colonel continued, "you would be required to sign a confidentiality agreement. Nothing you see or hear regarding the tattoo preparation can be shared with anyone outside this base." Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." Colonel Harrison was quiet for several long minutes, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. "Against my better judgment, I'm going to allow this. Private Johnson, you will be personally responsible for Mr. Thompson's conduct and whereabouts at all times he is on this base." "Thank you, sir," Johnson said with obvious relief. "Don't thank me yet," the colonel warned. "If this arrangement causes any problems whatsoever, both of you will face serious consequences." After they left the colonel's office, Johnson showed Marcus around the areas of the base where the tattoo preparation was taking place. Marcus was amazed by the scale of the operation. Massive stages were being constructed, sound equipment was being tested, and hundreds of performers were rehearsing various parts of the show. "This is incredible," Marcus said, watching a group of Marines practicing precision drill movements. "How long does it take to put all this together?" "Months of planning, weeks of construction, and countless hours of rehearsal," Johnson replied. "Every performer here has trained specifically for this event." They watched as musicians tuned their instruments, dancers stretched and practiced routines, and technical crews tested complex lighting systems. Marcus began to understand that the Royal Marines tattoo was more like a massive theatrical production than a simple military ceremony. "What exactly do you do in the show?" Marcus asked. "I'm part of the ceremonial guard sequence," Johnson explained. "We march in formation, perform rifle drills, and participate in the grand finale where all the performers come together. As they walked, several other Marines nodded respectfully to Johnson. It was clear that being selected for the tattoo was a significant honor among his peers. "Johnson," Marcus said suddenly, "why are you really helping me? You could have had me arrested." The young soldier stopped walking and considered the question. "Honestly, because I made mistakes when I was younger too. Not quite like yours, but I did things without thinking about the consequences. A few people gave me second chances, and that's how I ended up here." Marcus felt a deep respect for Private Johnson's maturity and generosity. "I promise I won't let you down." "I hope not," Johnson replied, "because starting tomorrow morning at 0600 hours, you're going to learn what real discipline feels like." That evening, Marcus went home and tried to explain to his friends what had happened. Danny and the others at the Anchor could hardly believe the story. "So instead of going to jail, you get to be part of the Royal Marines tattoo?" Danny asked incredulously. "Not exactly part of it," Marcus clarified. "I'm just helping with practice." But as he lay in bed that night, Marcus realized that he was more nervous about the next 3 days than he had been about anything in years. He had committed to helping with one of the most prestigious military events in the country, and he had absolutely no idea what he was getting himself into. Marcus arrived at the naval base at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes early as Johnson had instructed. The base was already bustling with activity, even at that early hour. Marines were jogging in formation, equipment was being moved into position, and the sound of military commands echoed across the grounds. Private Johnson met him at Gate 3, looking sharp in his training uniform. "Ready for this?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus replied, though his stomach was churning with nervousness. The next 3 days were unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Johnson taught him the basic movements and timing required for the ceremonial sequences. Marcus learned to march in perfect step, to turn with military precision, and to maintain rigid posture for extended periods. "Your left foot is still off by half a beat," Johnson said on the second day, after they had been practicing for 4 hours straight. Marcus was exhausted and sweating, despite the cool autumn weather. "How do you make this look so easy?" he gasped. 2 years of training," Johnson replied matter-of-factly, "and we're just getting started." By the third day, Marcus had developed a profound respect for the physical and mental discipline required to perform at the level expected for the tattoo. Every movement had to be perfect, every step had to be timed to match not just the music, but the lighting effects and the movements of dozens of other performers. During breaks, Marcus watched other parts of the rehearsal. He saw military bands practicing complex musical pieces, precision driving teams rehearsing with military vehicles, and ceremonial units working on intricate drill formations. The level of coordination required was staggering. "I had no idea," Marcus told Johnson during lunch on Thursday. "When I took your uniform, I thought this was just some kind of parade." "Most people don't understand," Johnson replied. "They see the final performance and think it's just a show. But every second of what happens on Saturday night represents hours of preparation and years of training." On Friday, the day before the actual tattoo, Colonel Harrison visited their practice session. Marcus immediately snapped to attention as Johnson had taught him. "At ease, Mr. Thompson," the colonel said. "Private Johnson, how is your preparation progressing?" "Very well, sir," Johnson replied. "Mr. Thompson has been an excellent training partner." Colonel Harrison watched as they ran through a sequence of movements. Marcus tried to match Johnson's precision, though he knew he was still far from perfect. "Acceptable," the colonel said when they finished. "Mr. Thompson, I understand that this week has given you a new perspective on military service." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. "I had no idea how much work and dedication goes into something like this. The Royal Marines tattoo isn't just entertainment," Colonel Harrison explained. "It's a demonstration of the values that define our service. Precision, teamwork, dedication, and respect for tradition." That evening, Marcus went home feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. He had learned more about discipline and commitment in 3 days than he had in years of his normal life. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Marcus wasn't performing in the actual tattoo, but Johnson had arranged for him to watch from a special seating area reserved for families of performers. As the sun set and the lights came up on the massive stage, Marcus felt his heart racing with excitement. The Royal Marines tattoo was spectacular beyond anything Marcus could have imagined. Hundreds of performers moved with clockwork precision. Bands played stirring military music, and the entire production told the story of British naval and military tradition through music, dance, and ceremony. When Private Johnson appeared with his ceremonial guard unit, Marcus felt a surge of pride. Johnson moved with perfect precision, his uniform immaculate, every step timed to perfection. The young soldier he had encountered in that alley just a week ago was now part of something magnificent. During the grand finale, as all the performers came together in a spectacular display of lights, music, and synchronized movement, Marcus found himself with tears in his eyes. He understood now that he hadn't just stolen a uniform that morning a week ago. He had nearly destroyed someone's dream and dishonored a tradition that meant everything to the people who served. But as the final notes of the national anthem played, and thousands of spectators rose to their feet in thunderous applause, something unexpected happened to Marcus. The overwhelming emotion of the moment, combined with the exhaustion from the intense week of training, suddenly hit him all at once. Marcus froze. His body went completely rigid, not from military discipline, but from pure emotional overload. The magnitude of what he was witnessing, the realization of how close he had come to ruining it all, and the incredible honor of being allowed to be part of the preparation, it all crashed over him like a wave. He sat motionless in his seat, while everyone around him cheered and applauded. People were taking pictures, waving flags, and celebrating the incredible performance they had just witnessed. But Marcus couldn't move. He couldn't even breathe properly. A woman sitting next to him noticed his distress. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked kindly. Marcus tried to respond, but no words came out. He was experiencing something he had never felt before, an overwhelming mixture of shame, gratitude, respect, and awe that left him completely paralyzed. Security. Personnel began to notice the young man who wasn't responding to the celebration around him. One officer approached, but before he could intervene, Private Johnson appeared, still in his ceremonial uniform, but now off duty. "He's with me," Johnson told the security officer. "He's been helping with rehearsals all week." Johnson sat down beside Marcus and spoke quietly. "It's okay. I know it's a lot to take in." "I almost destroyed this," Marcus finally whispered, his voice barely audible over the continued applause. "I almost ruined your chance to be part of something this incredible." "But you didn't," Johnson replied firmly. "In fact, you helped make it better. The extra practice we did together made me more confident tonight than I've ever been." As the crowd began to disperse and the lights dimmed, Marcus slowly began to regain his composure. Johnson helped him to his feet, and they walked together toward the exit. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now you go back to your life," Johnson said. "But I hope you remember what you learned this week." Colonel Harrison was waiting for them near the exit. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "Private Johnson tells me you were an exemplary training partner." "Thank you, sir," Marcus managed to say. "I've been thinking about our conversation earlier this week," the colonel continued. "You mentioned that you own a motorcycle repair shop." "Yes, sir. We have several vintage military motorcycles that are used in ceremonial events. They require specialized maintenance from someone who understands both mechanics and the importance of preserving historical artifacts." Marcus looked at the colonel in surprise. "Are you offering me work, sir?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to contribute something positive," Colonel Harrison replied, "if you're interested." 6 months later, Marcus had become the unofficial caretaker of the naval base's collection of ceremonial motorcycles. He had learned to appreciate the history and significance of each machine, treating them with the same respect he had learned to have for military traditions. Private Johnson had been promoted and was training for the next year's tattoo. He and Marcus had become genuine friends, bonding over their shared experience and mutual respect. Marcus still rode his own motorcycle through Portsmouth, but now he understood the difference between reckless adventure and meaningful challenge. He had learned that real excitement came not from taking what wasn't his, but from earning the right to be part of something greater than himself. And every time he passed the naval base, Marcus remembered the morning when a foolish prank had taught him the most important lesson of his life: that honor isn't something you can steal. It's something you have to earn.